very different points of view that have been put forward before we go into the panel discussion to bring this to light. Before we do that, I'd like to call up the other panelists. So Vinay, Dhar from Consat. CSO Consat-Orahi, of course, head of digital transformation. Peter Anderberg, founder and CEO of Heatnet Global. And we have online, I believe, Dr. Ajit Salvi, Director of Regional Center for Urban and Environmental Studies. Great, All India Institute of Local Self-Governance. So we have a lot to unpack, and we have very different views in which to do it. I'm going to start, though, because what we've heard as we've gone through the day today is views from national government, views from academy, views from researchers and industry. But what we've not heard, and where I'd like Dr. Salvi to start us off today, is the role of municipal bodies, the role of local governance in creating what we want to understand to be a smart city. Dr. Salvi, from your perspective, what is the role of municipal governance when it comes to smart city creation and smart execution, as Rupali told us about just now?
Just check whether I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for inviting me and giving some opportunity for speaking. Say, when you talk about the smart city, I just give you one Indian perspective also. Say, particularly when you talk about the India, there is a rapid urbanization happening, lots of rapid urbanization. Say, let us talk about only in a maybe 30 seconds about the figures. At this stage, about, say, India's population is around 1.45 billion and 36% is the urban population. And it is expected that by 2030, it will be 62%. So when I say 62%, comparing with the population figure, actual figure, it can be 590 million. So much of urbanization is possible and it will be happening in India. So when you talk about all this aspect, it is necessary that we have to go for smart infrastructure for the sustainability and growth. And for that purpose, municipal bodies plays a very crucial role. But it is very important that, say, whatever urbanization or whatever infrastructure, that should not be at the cost of environmental degradation. That is very important. So that is the reason the concept of when you talk about the smart city, so we cover the aspect of main core infrastructure such as adequate water supply, assured electricity, sanitation, and efficient urban transport, mobility, you can say. So this is covered. Now, coming to the role, basic role, so what is expected is what? The urban local body or municipality should go for, I'm just trying to shortly solve in a simple way. There should be an integrated urban development plan. So that is what, there should be a comprehensive plan for covering the all urban sector like transport, housing, energy, waste management. So whatever is happening or whatever this holistic approach should help in what something is you're changing in one line or say one particular vertical that should support some other area, other infrastructure. That thing should happen. It should not be say isolated way. So that is what they expected in integrated urban development. Second is what basically under this sustainable and smart initiative, the prioritization should be given for sustainable infrastructure. So rather than only a linear economy, till yesterday we were talking about, there should be some circularity aspect. So you can say efficient, say, or sustainable wastewater management, or we can say renewable energy. All these aspects need to be implemented and need to be think about. Then say after considering that, then we have to consider the technology aspect also. So leveraging the technology for service delivery. I can say that particularly whatever you talk about the smart technology, AI approach, all these things should be used for what purpose of what? Service delivery. I can say that particularly mobile application, mobile apps, that is definitely helpful because whatever that infrastructures are developed, that is for the benefit of the public.
Dr. Salvi,
so
I'm going to
actually technologies are used.
No, I think what you said, I want to come to Pelle because you said integrated development plans and then understanding how to prioritize what is to be done. in terms of engaging with stakeholders.
Yes.
Pelle, this is something that you touched upon with your diagram as well, in terms of stakeholder engagement, actually creating the ecosystem for engagement. Tell us more about how that works when it comes to public transport. You use that as an example in terms of how do you actually work with operators and get them to work together to share data and actually be competitive but also collaborative.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the most interesting aspects of what we do at Consat Telematics, a rather small player, but with a big amount of cities, is that we facilitate the work between the public transport authority and the operators to find win-wins that are there for everyone, at the same time as the operators can compete with each other, because it's actually a rather fierce competition in for example, the Nordics. They are bidding on the same contracts, etc., right? And we need to work with very high levels of integrity and trust, and be able of, how should I put it, technologically separate the stuff that should be secret and that should be proprietary and should work only for one operator, and the stuff that needs to be there for common good. And it's possible to do that for sure. And it builds on long-term relationships and finding the win-win.
So I'm going to ask you a follow-up, and then I want to ask Vinay to take forward this discussion. You talk about, when we spoke earlier, that operators don't want to work together. There's actually a little bit of competition when there shouldn't be, because there are easy, as you mentioned, clear wins here. The panel before also talked about this, the need to share data, the need to actually share data responsibly and to see a value in sharing. So how do you actually, as Consat, make that distinction?
So, one example is all the cities we operate in and all the operators are good guys and girls. And in the area of cybersecurity, we have upcoming legislation in Europe and also legislation in other countries. And each company needs to and wants to do penetration tests. And then they keep those secret. All cities would like to hear that we do penetration tests 100 times a year, right? So we can find the common weakest link, but it's all proprietary. Gothenburg has their proprietary, Oslo has their, and so on, right? But if we share on an aggregated and anonymized way, which can be done by AI, we strengthen the weakest link in an area where everyone wants the same. They want a safe system versus the bad guys, So that's one use case where I think sharing is creating a win-win, which is sustainable.
So Vinay, then I'm going to come to Consat-Orahi. Now, we've talked about these examples that Pelle is giving us, which is Sweden-specific or EU-specific in this case, but you've raised some points that can also be relevant to a cross-border discussion, which is data sharing, which is also proprietary information being made available to each other because there is a business case for it. We talked last year about very similar discussions, and you raised something that I think is worth repeating here, and that's collaborative trust and cultural and trust. How do you work with Consat-Orahi to take the examples that Pelle is talking about in Gothenburg, in this case, and bring them to India?
It's a good question, Arati, especially in the context of actually building new ideas when you're collaborating between two countries, in this case, Sweden and India. Trust becomes a very important element. Sweden and India brings and offers unique things to each other. Sweden, we heard that. It's the top nation when it comes to innovation index. India, fastest growing economy, and predicted to be for next 20, 30 years. And one thing that India has learned is the art of scaling at very huge levels any innovative idea. So Sweden with innovation, India with the art of scaling ideas is a perfect match. And then in that environment, building trust becomes a very key element to drive a long-term collaboration. I've been working now in Sweden or in context of Sweden for more than 20 years. And And I've learned that there are a few elements that are very important in terms of driving trust. One is, of course, understanding of local needs and understanding of context, because one size does not fit all. That's very important. Second, driving active intercultural dialogues. And when I say active intercultural dialogues, it's not only about understanding language or understanding business etiquettes, it's about respecting the underlying values, underlying motivations, and underlying concerns from both sides. And then thirdly, what I think what SIBC is doing here in the context of actually building a smart city solution, I mean, you do need involvement of governments, of educational institutions, entrepreneurs, communities. And that's the local ecosystem that, of course, is growing in India, but we have local ecosystem in Sweden. And what SIBC is doing through this process, getting those two local ecosystems together, I think that's a huge step towards building a long-lasting partnership where trust can be developed.
And trust, of course, also is predictability. Trust is knowing your partners. And Mikael, I want to come to you next because we touched upon the beginning the system that Pelle was talking about where if your bus is delayed, you have some understanding of it. Of course, take that discussion to India and your bus is delayed and you have no understanding of it. So when we talk about smart cities from all the different perspectives we put here today and you add the layer of AI, and you add the layer of intelligence from that perspective, how do you build trust when you bring AI into the discussion?
Oh, that's a very good question. Like if you step back a little bit, the unfortunate development right now when it comes to generative AI or this sort of human-like AI is that it's going to be centralized right now, and it's not going to be centralized either in India or in Sweden, but in the US. So with that in mind, I think if we're going to implement this sort of techniques, we should definitely put a lot of money into our own data centers that we could build together and have on our, within our own borders, basically. So that in itself is a huge task, and unfortunately, I don't see any government except the US actually putting in, the money where the what do you say?
Money where your mouth is.
Thank you, exactly. And so this is something, but. I also predict that...
Well, walk us through this, Mikael. Tell us, when you say that we should be building these data centers, it's not happening in the EU, but it's happening in the US. Walk us through why this is a problem.
Basically, all your data is going to be sent to the US, and the intelligence will be processed in the US. And one example that I'm afraid of is that the US government simply says, we're not going to export IQ over 120. To any other countries, basically, or even lower. If but it also makes sense because that puts them at advantage over the rest of the world. So I wouldn't be surprised, and I think I read that they're actually discussing this sort of to do this. So I think one thing there, the first step is to actually be owning those models and running them ourselves. Within our own borders, so we can control where it's being processed, how the data is being handled, and
So in terms of building trust, this is a very large way in which trust is being destabilized across the stakeholder map that you're talking about.
Yeah.
When it comes to bringing the stakeholders together across borders, this right here is an issue that needs to be dealt with as we build and scale.
Yeah.
And then, Peter, I want to come to you now with Heatnet. Of course, we're talking about putting forward energy-efficient solutions that seem to make business sense, that, of course, should be easy to deploy, very far away from working with the little bit of a discussion we've had before in terms of bringing the AI layer to a smart city stakeholder engagement. Tell us about Heatnet and how you've dealt with smart city solutions, and give us a taste of what your discussions have been within the EU and outside of the EU? Has it been easier to sell in both cases?
Yeah, well, I tried to do my best answering that. First of all, I must say I'm humbled sitting in this sofa with very clever people. I'm in a more basic industry. I'm actually dealing with heating and cooling of human beings, keeping rooms like this hot or comfortable, cold. And you may laugh at that. That's 30% of the global carbon footprint, keeping human beings in a comfortable space indoors. And it's going to get even worse in terms of carbon footprint if we not do anything about it. So what we do at Heatnet Global, we try to bring out best practice from various markets, Sweden, but also from other markets, and spread the best practice. How can we do this at scale? The problem today is that we are doing pilot projects here and there, and it doesn't do any good. It doesn't help. I like your comment on scaling things up, and I really do hope that the collaboration between Sweden and India could mean that we can learn to scale things up. Because it's not happening today, these things. Why is it not happening? Well, AI, and we come back to that, I guess, in a later conversation. But the problem in implementing these solutions, you were mentioning it as well, Rupali, it's too costly. It's way too costly to implement sustainable heating and cooling solutions. And that's why we can afford a public subsidized project once, and that's it. What we need to learn, and I hope AI will help us, and we see some tendencies in that in our sector to cut costs, to cut the cost for building it, operating, and also cutting risks, which in turn are costs as well. But to do that, we need two things, I see. And it's both of them are not related to AI, they are related to people. First of all, we need leaders. We don't necessarily need leaders on highest level. We need leaders in councils, having the guts to start these projects despite there are challenges. Where I see progress, I can pinpoint individual places. It's always due to one or two persons, not highest in the hierarchy, but somewhere in the hierarchy having the guts to stick their neck out and do something. The second, I know I'm running over probably what I should say, but the second thing is people, in terms of people with skills implementing the solutions. I'm not sure, but I might be wrong, but I don't believe AI can do the welding of district heating pipes, do the installation of heat pumps. Perhaps they can, I hope they can, because we need thousands of these installations every minute on the planet. And the problem, finally, is that we have too many people thinking about this, and too few people actually doing it. It's like I often make the analogy to a restaurant. The dining room is full of hungry people. There are 10 consultants sitting on the second floor making recipes, and there is one guy in the kitchen doing the cooking. And that's our sector of heating and cooling today. I don't know whether I answered your question.
You did, absolutely. But I want to ask you a follow-up, and I think Michael's picked up the mic, so I'm going to give the mic to you in a second. But Peter, you think that's still the case today? Because I know when we started today's discussion this morning, we looked back 11 years, and we looked to where we were 11 years ago, both in India and in Sweden. And we look then to where we are today. And we had industry in the room in the first panel saying, the discussion is no longer about why, it's about how. And there is internalization of what has been external to the economic paradigm of where heating and cooling would come in. Of course, India understands how important heating and cooling it is to its carbon footprint. So you would say, and I'm going to push you on this, you would say that the landscape has not shifted to understanding the value of your argument from 11 years ago to today.
Yeah, I've done a very bad job. Nothing has changed. 10 years ago, UK had 2% market share for district heating. Stockholm, where we sit now, it's 95% market share. Today, the market share in UK is still 2%. 10 years ago, and I'm not pinpointing if there are Brits here, I mean, it's similar in money markets. And if we look at the decarbonization of heating and cooling, more than 90% of all buildings in Central Europe, including UK, are still heated and cooling with fossil fuels. And that nothing has changed. Yeah, I can talk about why I believe that, but we can come back to that potentially. But it's still the same situation, I would say.
So I'm going to come to you, Rupali, because of course IVL is a leading player in this field and is actually pushing the border to understand what cities can do and what projects can do in partnerships to create solutions and create pilots that showcase and be lighthouses for scaling of solutions. And of course, you're doing that in Mumbai.
Yes, Arati. I like that argument what Peter has raised, and then I saw the Pelle has took the mic, but he did not get to chance to comment on that. You will get it. So coming back to your question, Arati, IVL has always been a front runner to work on all sustainable or at least underlining 1 or 2 sustainable goals in through our project. Coming back to Mumbai's project, what we are doing, we are bringing a base knowledge. We are doing smart execution. That is very, very important. Bring digitalization. Bringing digitalization in smart execution is very, very important at the moment because we need early warning for any failures in a system or any difficulties or presence of any foreign substance in the system. So digitalization is important. Of course, AI, we will see in a future AI-driven wastewater treatment facility or waste heat recovery facility. I'm not denying that. But at the moment, I'm not sure if we are there. But what where I stand, I feel more and more digitalization in water, waste, energy side, we need that. A lot of innovation need to be done in this area. We also need to underline that if we want to develop a right infrastructure to handle this pressure, we need to go for infrastructure retrofitting in Mumbai or elsewhere. You cannot just destroy the infrastructure you have today, just upgrade it. Our goal is to develop the eco or resource efficient urban ecosystem. Then we need to have the strategy to cut down on our CO2 emission. And for that, we need a smart execution. And this could be done with, we have these 3 multi-faced approach, sustainability, adaptability, and then proactive actions or proactive planning. Very, very important. Then you can work on the different strategies to develop cities for ready for any tomorrow's challenges.
Both Pelle and Mikael took up the mic. Do you want to say anything before I come to my next question? Please. We value
I just wanted to, listening to you, Peter, the aspect of heating and cooling. And I think there is a cross-industry thing here. 80% of the energy in an electrical bus in Middle East is cooling. And I believe India is rather hot as well. That's perhaps why you go on the roof every now and then. But it's really important, and to use these technologies. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's about working together and I mean really doing it. So I subscribe to what you say. Yeah.
Absolutely. Dr. Salvi, I'd like to bring you in on the discussion right now because you've heard the different speakers on the stage talking about the solutions that they have when it comes to putting in place a smart city ecosystem. From your perspective, let me just check, is Dr. Salvi with us? There you are, great.
Yes, I'm listening.
So from your perspective, when it comes to municipal urban bodies and what they can do with some of the solutions that you've heard, when it comes to data management, when it comes to stakeholder engagement, when it comes to solutions and problems that IVL and Rupali is talking about, but operations here and now, what do you see that we need to be looking at to help municipal bodies actually engage in the solutions that are available and, like Peter is saying, are not being fully understood?
So basically, you're talking about the data collection and management, right?
Exactly.
Arati? Okay. Yes. Say, really speaking, considering the huge population and urban population, say efficient data collection and management, that is a really pivotal. to be very frank. And it helps us, considering all whatever speakers said. I can say that this whatever you're talking about the data management and say collection, it helps in what data-driven decision making, particularly whatever predictive analysis in any say urban scenario. I can give you examples as I go ahead. Say particularly when I talk about the say we are going for master planning and further say arrangement. So it helps us in what better infrastructure planning and development. So otherwise, over a period of time, that proper insufficient data, and over a period of time, within 5 years, whatever infrastructure is developed, that becomes useless. So that is one of the aspects. See, you are talking about the community engagement. So that is also very much important, particularly in connection with the say data collection and management. So here you will find that citizens are really, we require some participatory approach from the citizens. Their engagement is required. Their involvement is required because we are on a going forward, say, not on a say, citizens' involvement is expected. So that is also helping us. And two more aspects actually I want to talk about. That is what particularly efficient say resource allocation. So this is not directly disconnected with what today's discussion, but I can give you the example of say COVID say 19. Whenever we fought with that particular pandemic, in a slum like Dharavi, that data helped us how that resource can be allocated, how it can be done. It is supposed to be a population of that slum is 10 lakhs. So that is very much important. Otherwise, that optimization of the resource, proper use of the resource, that help us with this data collection and management aspects are concerned. And last, very important, that is what particularly when you talk about the traffic, mobility, say all this aspect, say particularly in our sewerage system and wastewater system, we have implemented GPS, we have implemented GIS also. So say, let us say 75,000 numbers of manholes are what, say it is geotagged. So this is the use of sensor, say artificial intelligence in sometimes, not I'm saying 100%, or the smart manholes and all aspects that help us what taking the good decision in this particular process. This is what in short actually I wanted to just share. Otherwise it can be a very huge thing so far Mumbai is concerned. Thanks Arati.
But Dr. Salvi, let me ask you a follow-up question. So from your perspective, listening to what you've heard on the panel here today in terms of the different solutions that are being put towards a smart city, what is critical from your perspective for Mumbai today to continue what it's been doing on smart city deployment? Now, you've mentioned geotagging manholes. Of course, the way in which GIS is being used and geospatial data is being used is already in play. What do you want to see being done now?
Say, now the thing is what particularly as Rupali was talking about, we are just moving ahead now. Say, basically now, say only wastewater treatment was the yesterday's scenario. Now we are interested in what smart applications, smart operation and maintenance, predictive analysis, and say IoT based application. So these are the requirement, and you'll find that as a part of it challenges are concerned. At some of the places there is a lagging of the technology aspects are there. Skilled manpower is also not there. So definitely we need all this aspect from the say one speaker was talking about the innovation from the Sweden and scalability in India. So that is what very much needed. Once that particular technology or particular aspects are say transferred to India, then definitely we can use it and make it more smart operation and smart use of all this technology. That is what our expectation from say Sweden experts.
That's great, because then I'm going to come to Vinay and Mikael when it comes to data, because of course Dr. Salvi has talked about operations and maintenance. This becomes a critical issue when you're talking about infrastructure investments and how do you actually maintain the money being spent and of course maintain the life cycle of the money being spent. Data is critical in that. Cross-border data is not so easy to actually engage with, and cross-border data collaboration and data sharing has been a struggle. We talk about what can be done when we have access to data, and we have access to what data can give us in terms of translating this into AI and translating into AI solutions. How do you resolve that first level problem of data sharing that actually works cross-border, different regulations, different stakeholders? Vinay, I'd like to start with you, and then Michael, you.
I mean, smart application in the context of smart cities, I mean, data sharing is a big challenge for sure. And ecosystem have to come together to address this problem. You know, governments, businesses, and education institutes have to come together. We've seen flavors of that in Singapore, how they've dealt with it. We've seen European Union, how they deal with navigating the problem around data sharing across borders. I'm a big fan of mobile industry, where I've actually spent most of my time, and it would not have been if it was not an open standard and interoperability, which I believe is a very important step towards driving data sharing. In mobile industry, you wouldn't have 180 countries around the world communicating on a mobile network if it was not for open standards and interoperability. I think the other aspect is really bringing in privacy aspect by design. In cities, when you talk about collecting data and sharing and processing that data, the privacy aspect should actually come in at the outset of designing the solutions. And here, I guess, we have a good example of what GDPR has brought in from a European Union perspective. And finally, I think with AI, I mean, it brings massive opportunity for data sharing. These systems that are underlying systems that enable AI, they should behave ethically. And that's a very big discussion. It's a joint responsibility. European AI ethics or Euro AI ethics is a first step that has been discussed in European Union. It's a good step. And it's a step to drive transparency, accountability, and openness. An AI algorithm that you actually apply for a smart city solution, I believe, has to be transparent. That's very key.
So, Michael, are we talking? Vinay mentioned GDPR, Vinay mentioned privacy by design, but Vinay also mentions open source. Is that where we're going?
I hope we are. When it comes to, I also like to add to that I totally agree with you, and but also we have to, if we add those generative AI systems, they are also, I would say that the system that actually it generates new data, and that system, and this is what I'm talking about right now. These systems are in the United States. But there are open source solutions, and thank God, I never thought I would say that, but thank you, Mark Zuckerberg. He's the only one pushing for open source AI models. So I think what we have to do when it comes to the generative part is to actually use those open source models, or perhaps models that's being developed inside of Europe to generate this new data, basically. And then, just as you said, like we need to keep that data within our borders and have, find ways to share the outcome or to share the data with those we collaborate with, I guess. So.
And Michael, I'm going to come back to you and say, because Dr. Salvi talked about like the need for capacity building to help operators on the ground understand what technology is being deployed.
Yes.
Not to bring in these consultants that you talked about, but actually teach a man to fish.
Yes.
Now, the world that you showed us when you were talking to us in the 5-minute fireside chat, as you said, is terrifying.
Yeah.
And we've talked a lot about this. When we talk about generative AI, we talk about ChatGPT, Copilot. We've done this discussion about, where is it going? There's a black box. Do we open it? What does it mean? So I'd like you to tell us, how do we get ahead of this? We have this world that is unfolding at this rapid speed. How do we, in this room, online, what is the toolkit we need to be aware of to get ahead of what's happening? When it comes to skills specifically, what should we be looking at?
Sorry.
Skills, in terms of, because
yeah.
a lot of people are concerned about losing their jobs.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that every day.
I wish I could be a little bit hopeful, but I think we're actually moving into a time where things are going to change very, very fast. And I think a lot about Bruce Lee. He said, "Be like water." And I think that's the only tip I can give. It's like to be adaptable, but also I really want to hammer this in that we need to, if we're going to use those generative AI systems, we really have to bring it inside our borders here, or we'll be in the hands of the US. And that means that we need to, actually build those data centers, build out the capacity and be on top of and control it ourselves, or we will be controlled. That's how simple it is. But then also Bill Gates, and I think I agree, he's now talking about 3-day weeks. And that sounds pretty nice to me.
I have no problem with that.
But yeah, it's really, I think we really need to, take destiny in our own hands, start building out our own data centers, run our own models, and or we will be owned by somebody else.
So Peter, I'm going to come to you. Now, you've heard what Mikael said in terms of where we're going, opening up Pandora's box in terms of the way forward. You have very, you mentioned in the beginning of the panel, very clear views on what you feel the role of AI should be, or how should we work with AI as a future, not even a future, present integrator.
Yeah, first of all, on the skills side, I think there is a good career opportunity in becoming a welder. We need tens of thousands of them in the next few years, and I'm not joking. I think I need to touch upon that.
Yeah, don't get me started on humanoids.
Yeah, okay. We skip them. No worries. But let AI. First of all, one observation I have is that we are extremely well trained in theoretical things today. Young people are very well trained, well educated in general. It's very good. But there is a flip side of that. It's that we strive for the theoretical perfect all the time. That means that you don't do anything because you don't really reach that stage of perfect. And I see quite a lot of projects fail in the early stage because we really want to optimize. I think we need to. There is a good saying I learned when I was a kid. Don't make the best the enemy of the good. We have to deal with what we have. 90% of the buildings we have around us today will still be around in 50 years. Well, at least hope so. We need to deal with the buildings we have. We were in India, Rupali and I, a few weeks ago, looking at the waste incineration plant. And if you are in my profession and you see that waste incineration plant, it's a worse nightmare than AI. It was terrible. But we need to deal with that. That's what they have. And there is plenty of energy that we could easily suck out of that plant, and which we are going to suck out from that plant, and 250 similar plants in India, using innovations from Sweden and hopefully being able to scale it up in India with local partners, obviously. So AI is obviously brilliant, and it's very scary when I listen to you and what I read about it. But I think we need to invent another concept, perhaps before we go on with AI. I call it EI, execution intelligence. We need to get things going with what we have at hand, rather than thinking about perfect somewhere in the future.
I'm going to end with Vinay and Rupali. We've heard a lot here today. Now I want you both to step back. You have been on both sides of the Sweden-India corridor. You have been deploying, you have been discussing, you have been understanding who your stakeholders are. We have the Sweden-India Innovation Partnership. We have different stakeholders, enablers who can set platforms and build frameworks. What do you need to see in this smart city discussion? We've dealt with different layers of the discussion in this dialogue. What do you need to see to create the framework to build this ecosystem at all levels? Rupali, I'm going to start with you. Vinay, I'll come to you next.
Thank you, Arati. Sweden-India Innovation Partnership has built that bridge where the innovators and researchers from both the sides are coming closer to each other. As Vinay has mentioned, the innovation is translating in India. Swedish innovation, we could translate in India and scale it up. So that bridge we have created. Now Vinay is in a room. Vinay gave us a task to carry out, to see if Sweden-India Bilateral Center of Excellence could be established. That could be another initiative which could bring or give a platform to both the side innovator, researcher to come closer to each other, discuss the problem for local condition and develop the solution for local condition. What solution we have here? You know, we are a small country, just 10 million people. If you see in an Indian context, is 1.45 billion people. So they need a big, economically sustainable, smarter, efficient solution and in a very, very fast way. So what I feel such a platform, if we give a platform called Sweden-India Bilateral Center of Excellence for Sustainable Society, then both the side innovators, the SMEs, startups could come and discuss the problem for certain areas and bring the solution which could fit for the certain area. So it will be area specific. This is what I feel, and let's see where we go to do this. And I like your concept. EI first, then AI. Thank you.
Thanks, Rupali. So a center of excellence to allow stakeholders kind of a one-stop shop to engage. Vinay.
I mean, I'll just sort of put a context to this. I mean, we are living in an era that is very interesting because this is first time that you see multiple technologies coming to a similar level of maturity. And it's never happened before. You can see compute powers on the edge, compute power on the cloud. You can actually address complex data sets. It's not a problem. Broadband connectivity is available everywhere. And then this, together with the availability of open source, I'm a big supporter of that, open community, the power of functional programming, it's all bringing you the power to innovate limitless. Technology is actually democratizing. There's a huge democratization of technology available now for anyone to actually innovate. I mean, we've seen companies, huge companies of global scale being built by just 3 or 4 people. And at Consat-Orahi in India, we believe with this environment, there is a need for driving innovation and fostering it actually at an early stage of the education institutions. And for that reason, we have launched a very ambitious program called 1 Million Founders. And that program basically brings businesses, governments, founders, entrepreneurs, educational institutions, especially the high schools, where we really want to give them the exposure to the real world and give the exposure for them to really understand how they can use technology to address the problem and create more startup companies in India. And I think in the end, it's not only about creating startup companies, it's about actually doing a systematic change to bring and foster innovation mindset much early than where it is today in India. So we're happy to drive this. We've actually tested it in around 10 schools. It's been accepted very graciously. We do business with schools in India, provide telematics service. And we believe that this has a big potential, and we definitely would like more and more to join with us on this initiative.
Thank you so much. So you've heard from the panelists here that we build the ecosystem center of excellence, but also create the entrepreneurs of tomorrow to build the solutions of tomorrow. Join me in giving our panelists a round of applause.